They left everything to my sister. The house, the savings, even the lake cabin we built memories in. And me? I wasn't even a footnote. Hi, I'm Natalie. And the day I found that will in a dusty attic folder, something inside me shifted. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I walked away and started a life they never imagined I was capable of. But when my sister unknowingly applied for a job under my name, I had a choice to make. Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have let them live in silence, just like they did to you? Tell me in the comments, because some stories cut deeper when they're written in ink and inheritance. I didn't go digging through the attic looking for heartbreak. It was just supposed to be one of those quiet spring Saturdays, windows open, sun slipping in through dusty blinds, Mom humming an old Carpenter's song while folding up my dad's winter coats. We were cleaning out what she called the time capsule. The attic stacked high with boxes labeled Xmas Lights 1999, Kids School Art, and Basement Stuff, Do Not Open. I was kneeling on the floor, surrounded by crumpled newspaper and cracked plastic bins, when Mom handed me a thin box. Inside were my childhood drawings, stick figures with huge heads and heart-shaped hands. She smiled, that kind of half-proud, half-pitying smile I hadn't seen in years. "You always took care of Charlotte," she said softly, "even when she used to draw all over your homework." I laughed, but something about the way she said it stuck, like it was a compliment with a catch I hadn't yet caught. It wasn't until an hour later, after Dad had gone down to make sandwiches, that I saw it. A blue folder tucked between some loose greeting cards and a stack of old bank envelopes. It wasn't hidden, just placed carefully, like something important but no longer urgent. The label was handwritten in faded ink, Will, June, 2012. I picked it up without thinking. At first, I thought it might be health records or insurance information. Mom and Dad were always talking about being prepared. I expected policies or maybe something about medical directives. But when I opened the first page, I froze. Charlotte's name was typed cleanly under sole beneficiary. I blinked. Scanned again. House. Charlotte. Savings account, ending in -9234. Charlotte. Life insurance. Charlotte. Retirement annuities, family car, even the little lake cabin we'd spent summers at growing up, all listed clearly, line after line. I flipped through every page. My name wasn't anywhere, not in fine print, not even as a backup. There wasn't a single mention of me, not as an alternate executor, not as the other daughter, not even as family. I sat there holding the folder, fingers curled around the edge until it creased. My heart didn't race. It just sunk. Heavy. The kind of weight you feel when you realize something that's always been true, but never spoken out loud, has finally been printed in black and white. Underneath the folder in the same box, I found a recipe card in Charlotte's handwriting. Dad's birthday cake, double cinnamon. She never baked, but she had beautiful cursive. I flipped it over. On the back, a Polaroid photo was wedged between the lines. It was us, me and Charlotte, maybe age 6 and 3. I was hugging her, arms tight around her belly like I thought the wind would carry her off if I let go. She was laughing, her hair a messy nest of blonde curls. In the background, Mom stood at the porch holding a glass of iced tea. She was looking at Charlotte, not me. I glanced back at the will, then at the photo. They saw her, not me. I whispered it, not because I needed to say it out loud, but because I needed to hear how it sounded outside of my head. They saw her when she failed, when she stumbled, when she cried in public or quit another job or missed rent again. They saw her so clearly, so vividly. that they bent the world to cushion her every fall. And me? I was the steady one. The one who held the flashlight during power outages, who came home from college every Thanksgiving, who paid off the water bill once without telling them when Charlotte forgot again. I was the background. I gently placed the folder back where I'd found it, pressed the lid down on the box like nothing had happened. Mom walked back up the attic stairs a few minutes later with a pitcher of lemonade and asked if I could bring down the donation bags. "Sure," I said. "Almost done up here." I don't remember the rest of that day. I think we packed up the coats and old decorations. I think Dad tried to make turkey sandwiches but forgot the mustard. I think Charlotte called to ask for help with rent again. What I remember is the silence on the ride home. Matt drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my knee. I didn't say a word. That night, while he slept beside me, soft breaths rising and falling, I stared at the ceiling, not angry, not surprised, just hollow. I replayed every holiday, every late-night phone call from Mom worrying about Charlotte, every time I said, "I'll take care of it." I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought love meant stepping back so others could step forward. But maybe all I did was make it easier for them to forget I was ever there. I turned toward the wall, letting my eyes trace the outline of the curtains in the dark. They didn't forget me. They just chose not to include me. And somehow, that felt so much worse. The sun was almost too perfect that day. One of those clear, golden afternoons in late June when everything looks like a photo filter. Glasses of lemonade glowing in the light, kids squealing on the grass, someone's laughter drifting from the back porch like a breeze. It was my father's 65th birthday, and the whole backyard had been dressed up for the occasion. String lights crisscrossed above the tables, napkins folded into tidy triangles, the grill already sizzling. I brought a bottle of white wine, my go-to safe choice, and I was the first to arrive. Naturally, Matt had to work, so it was just me this time. I wore a soft yellow sundress Charlotte used to tease me about, said it made me look like a librarian on vacation. I liked how it felt, simple and clean, familiar. I helped Mom arrange the silverware, then set up chairs, refilled the ice bucket, and sliced lemons into thin, exact circles for the tea. When Dad walked over and saw the spread, he gave a loud whistle. "Well, somebody knows how to throw a party." Charlotte came out of the house behind him, holding a stack of paper plates. Only 3, I noticed. "Of course," he added, grinning at her. "My little firecracker always knew how to make an entrance." She laughed, tousled her already messy hair, and winked at me. "It's the plates, Dad. They do all the heavy lifting." I said nothing, just smiled and handed her the tongs. The guests trickled in like clockwork. Uncle Jim with his mustache and fishing stories. Aunt Mabel wearing a floral dress too tight in all the wrong places. Cousins I hadn't seen in years who asked what I did now and still looked confused when I said educational consulting. Charlotte's 2 boys darted past, sticky fingers and scraped knees, chasing each other with foam swords someone brought. I knelt and helped the younger one, Max, tie his shoelace. He called me Charlie by mistake, and I gently corrected him. The barbecue rolled on like these things always do. Burgers flipped, beers cracked open, someone put on a country pop playlist from an old Bluetooth speaker near the garden gnome. People posed for Polaroid photos, holding up novelty glasses and paper mustaches. I poured drinks, checked the food, made sure the kids had napkins. Dad's favorite, corn salad with honey lime vinaigrette, was placed near the grill, just as he liked it. I'd made it that morning, chilled it in my cooler, drove 30 minutes with the air conditioning on high, just so it'd stay fresh. He took a bite and grinned. Charlotte, you nailed it this time." She looked over, mid-sip of soda, then shrugged. I wish I could take credit. Natalie's the one who knows recipes. I just bring the chaos. Everyone laughed. My dad blinked, but didn't correct himself. That was when Uncle Jim stood up balancing a red Solo cup in one hand. A quick toast, he said, swaying slightly, to Charlotte. She's been through hell and back, raising 2 boys, working odd jobs, handling life like a prizefighter. I heard murmurs of agreement, the thrum of casual admiration, a few claps. She's overcome so much, he added, lifting his glass higher. You're our warrior. I watched her blush, head tilted back in modest protest. I smiled too, but it wasn't mine anymore. Then Mom spoke up, voice bright, as if tying a ribbon around the moment. And of course, Natalie's always been steady. She reached for my shoulder with a warm pat. But Charlotte's our heart. There was silence, soft and sudden. That was the part that caught in my throat. Not the mistake, not even the toast. But that word, steady, said like it was a lovely kind of emptiness, a placeholder for real feeling. I excused myself quietly and slipped into the house. The guest bathroom smelled like lilacs and Clorox. I leaned over the sink, staring at my face under the harsh bulb light. Lipstick smudged. Mascara threatening rebellion. I pressed a paper towel to the corner of my eye, careful not to let anything fall. I exist, I whispered, gripping the edge of the counter. But they only feel when she breaks. I thought of Matt's words from earlier that week. You don't need their approval, Nat. He was right, but approval had never been the point. I just wanted to be seen. I reapplied my lipstick with a tissue, dabbed at the corners, and pasted the smile back on. When I stepped outside again, no one had noticed I was gone. Dinner was wrapping up. People gathered near the fire pit with tiny s'mores kits. Charlotte laughed big and loud at something someone said about Dad's old fishing hat. Her boys were curled up under a blanket someone had thrown over a lawn chair. The music played on, easy and nostalgic. Something about trucks and long roads and second chances. Someone waved a Polaroid camera, motioning for a group shot. I joined the edge, crouching beside the cooler, resting one hand on the picnic table. They snapped the photo. Everyone laughed again. It wasn't until I was home later, barefoot in the kitchen, flipping through the photos someone had posted online, that I saw it. The picture from the party. Charlotte front and center, arms around Dad and Mom. Cousins lined behind them, smiling wide. I was there too. You could just barely see my shoulder, cropped at the edge of the frame. I stared at it for a long time. I was standing right next to them. I didn't plan on saying anything. I didn't come over to start a fight or to make a scene. Honestly, I think some part of me still wanted to be talked out of it, convinced that maybe I misunderstood what I saw in that folder, that there was an explanation I'd somehow missed. But deep down, I knew better. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind my parents always liked, the kind with decaf coffee and matching mugs, eggs soft-boiled just the way Dad liked them, and soft classical music humming faintly from the kitchen radio. When I walked into the living room, Dad was flipping the pages of the newspaper, making those little throat-clearing sounds he always did between articles. Mom was knitting something lavender, another blanket for one of Charlotte's boys, probably. They both looked up when I sat down across from them. Dad nodded. Mom smiled. No one said, "What's wrong?" That silence told me everything. I wrapped both hands around my mug, mostly to steady them. "There's something I need to ask," I said, voice calm. Too calm, maybe. "Why did you leave me out of the will?" Dad's fingers paused mid-turn of a page. Mom's needles stilled. It was the kind of pause that only happens when people were hoping you'd never bring it up. Mom was the first to respond. She reached for her tea and took a slow sip, as if the warmth might help her shape her words. "Honey," she began, "it's not like that." I said nothing. "Charlotte, she just needs it more," she said softly. "You have Matt, a career. You're doing fine." Dad added without looking up, "It's not about love, Nat. It's about support, where it's needed." I nodded. Slowly, deliberately. "So, everything I've done doesn't count as support." They exchanged a glance. Not nervous, just tired. I paid her court fees. I helped her find a rehab program twice. I stayed up tutoring her kids during finals week so they wouldn't fall behind. Mom blinked. "I paid the power bill when it got shut off last winter," I continued, "and I covered your deductible after Dad's surgery last year." "That was you?" Dad asked, brows furrowing. I stared at him. Of course it was me. Mom reached for my hand. I didn't offer it. "Well, that was very kind of you," she said gently. "We didn't know." "That's the point," I replied. "You never ask." She sat back. Dad folded his paper and set it on the armrest. "You've always been capable," he said. "You never needed us the way Charlotte did." "She needed excuses," I said, "and she got them. Every single time." It wasn't anger that filled me, not even sadness. It was something quieter, like finally realizing a door you thought was stuck was actually locked from the other side. I thought about a memory I hadn't let myself revisit in years, me at 12, giving Charlotte my ice cream cone because she'd dropped hers, only for her to trip again and the scoop to fall. She'd cried. Mom scolded me for not holding hers too. I remember thinking then, but I did everything right, and still, it hadn't been enough. I looked around the room, the same curtains from high school, the framed cross-stitch Mom made for their 30th anniversary, the faded photo of all four of us in matching Christmas sweaters, Charlotte front and center, me half turned behind her. I stood up. I used to think that if I just kept showing up, holidays, birthdays, fixing the garage door, bringing over groceries, one day you'd look at me and see your daughter again. I walked down the hallway to my old bedroom. It smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly musty. The trophies were still on the shelf, the ones from school science fairs and debate tournaments. Dusty. Forgotten. I opened the closet and pulled out a small navy duffel bag I kept here, just in case. Funny how I never thought the just in case would be for this. I packed slowly, a sweater I used to wear around the house, a paperback novel I'd left on the nightstand, a hairbrush. I paused when I saw the old photo strip taped to the mirror, me and Matt from our first trip to the lake cabin. I peeled it off carefully and slid it into the side pocket. As I zipped up the bag, my eye caught something fluttering near the bedroom window. Outside, the porch wine chime swung gently in the breeze. It was the one I made in 7th grade. Copper pipes, painted wooden beads, a little ceramic bird at the bottom. Still hanging, still sounding its soft, uneven song. I stood there for a moment, just listening. Then I walked back through the living room. Neither of them looked up. At the door, I turned once, not to say goodbye, but to make sure I remembered it exactly as it was. The two people who raised me and somehow forgot me anyway. I stepped outside. Matt was waiting in the car, engine running, one arm draped over the steering wheel. He didn't say a word when I slid into the passenger seat. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe hard. I just watched through the window as the house got smaller and smaller behind us. No one followed. No one called. I had no inheritance, no backup plan, no safety net wrapped in a family name or a legacy passed down in quiet assurance. What I had was a rented apartment that smelled like old carpet and garlic from the neighbors' cooking. I had Matt, who believed in me quietly, with steady eyes and late-night hugs that didn't require many words. And I had an idea, not a business plan or a vision board, just a stubborn, aching need to make sure no one else had to feel as invisible as I once did. We moved to Portland that fall. Matt found contract work with a small tech startup, and I took a part-time admin job at a local charter school just to keep the lights on. The apartment was barely 400 square feet. Our bed was a mattress on the floor. The kitchen faucet squeaked when you turned it too fast, and our living room table was a cardboard box covered with a scarf from college. And still, I loved it. Each morning, the sky hovered in a soft gray, like it wasn't quite sure what it wanted to be. I'd walk past brick buildings, their windows fogged with steam, and think, maybe this is how things grow, under cover. The name came to me while shelving books at the library near our apartment, Voices Unseen. It was a whisper in my chest, a reminder that sometimes what matters most isn't loud. It's persistent. At first, the mentorship group was just 5 girls from the school where I worked. We met in the back room of the library every Thursday afternoon. I brought snacks from the dollar store, peanut butter crackers, juice boxes, string cheese. We sat on mismatched chairs, legs curled under us, scribbling dreams on printer paper and talking about what it meant to feel heard. They were shy at first, distracted. Some came only because it meant free snacks and Wi-Fi, but slowly, something shifted. One of them, Marisol, brought her younger sister. Another, Dana, started writing poetry. I printed her first poem on colored paper and hung it by the sign-in sheet. After 6 months, we outgrew the back room. I begged the local community center to give us their unused office every Wednesday. I borrowed folding chairs from a friend and bought a second-hand projector off Craigslist. At night, while Matt coded into the early hours, I stayed up writing lesson plans. I studied trauma-informed practices, watched webinars on how to reach students who'd been let down too often. My browser history was a mess of behavioral science, grant writing templates, and articles titled things like Nonprofit 101, What I Wish I Knew. Some weeks, only one girl showed up. I'd bike to the center in the rain, soaked through my jacket, just to sit with her for an hour and talk about failing grades or a boy who called her names. Part of me wanted to quit, but the other part, the one that had once stood on the edge of a family photo and been cropped out, kept going. In our second year, a regional nonprofit called Northwest Youth Rise offered seed funding, $10,000 to expand programming and hire a part-time coordinator. I cried in the parking lot of the community center when I got the news. Matt found me sitting on the curb with the email still open on my phone. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me and handed me a cup of lukewarm gas station coffee. "You did this," he said. That night, he made boxed mac and cheese for dinner and popped a bottle of sparkling apple cider. We ate on the floor, laughing like kids. He toasted me with a plastic cup and said, "To every girl who didn't get invited to the table," and built her own. In our third year, something wild happened. A national foundation reached out. They had found our program online. They liked our focus on overlooked youth, the fact that we used first-generation mentors, and that we had a 93% school retention rate. They offered a $250,000 grant, renewable for 2 years. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. When the funds came in, I moved the program into our own small space, a storefront office near the community college. We painted the walls ourselves. The girls picked the colors. One side lavender, the other soft gray. We called it the Echo Room, because we believed every unheard voice deserved a place to resonate. I kept my lunches simple. PB&J on a bench outside the building most days, legs crossed, reading over attendance logs. The plant in my office window, a gift from a former student, was half wilted but still alive. Like me, bruised, bent, but trying. One evening, while cleaning out my inbox, a new subject line caught my eye. Forbes Women, feature request. 35 under 35, women changing education. I stared at it for nearly a full minute. Me? I clicked it open. The body was brief but direct. They wanted to interview me. They had read about Voices Unseen. They called my story powerful. They asked for headshots and a time to schedule the call. I leaned back in my chair, heart loud in my ears. They erased me, I whispered. But now, I'm everywhere. The next week, the magazine arrived in the mail, glossy and bold. My photo in a column of brilliant women, doctors, entrepreneurs, social activists. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just held it for a while. Then my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Mom, and beneath it, an email. Subject, job application, Charlotte M. Grant. It started with a name, not a confrontation, not an apology, just a name at the top of an email flagged by our HR system, Charlotte M. Grant. I stared at the screen, blinking once, twice. The resume had come through a job board posting for an outreach coordinator at Voices Unseen. Our nonprofit had grown enough to open a second location across town, and we were finally hiring externally. I didn't open the file. Didn't need to. The name was enough. The name, and the irony that it had landed in my inbox, not hers. The same sister who once scoffed over Thanksgiving dinner and said, "You work with kids? That's cute. But is it real work?" And now she wanted in. On the cute idea she once mocked. I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. Outside, a group of teens were painting a mural across the back wall of our office, bold shapes, soft colors, and the words, "We were here. We still are." I remembered the first day we opened this space, the smell of fresh paint, the folding chairs we assembled ourselves, the bookshelf we built from milk crates and donated novels. I remembered sitting on this very floor, eating peanut butter sandwiches with Matt and wondering if it would all fall apart. Now we had full-time staff. We had grants. We had wait lists. We had applicants. I hovered over the resume for a long time, and then I made a decision. I clicked respond and sent an automated message we typically reserved for finalists. "Thank you for your interest in Voices Unseen. To proceed with your application, please submit a 500-word essay titled, 'Who Deserves a Second Chance and Why?' No rejection, no confrontation, just a mirror." Then I closed the laptop and walked away. Days passed. I didn't tell anyone, not even Matt. I thought maybe Charlotte would sense it was me behind the curtain. Maybe she'd write something raw, something true. Maybe she'd remember. But nothing came. Instead, a letter arrived. Real paper. Handwritten. From my mother. It was folded neatly, as if she'd spent time getting it just right. "Natalie," it began, "we made mistakes. I know you don't want to hear that. Maybe it's too late. But your father's health is failing. He asks about you. Every time we see the newsletter from Voices Unseen, he points and says, 'That's our girl. We're proud of you. We just didn't know how to say it. Love, Mom.' No demands, no guilt, just words." Matt found me sitting on the couch that night, holding the letter like it might tear if I breathed too hard. He didn't ask what it was, just sat beside me and waited. I handed it to him. He read it once, then again. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I broke the silence. "I already helped them," I said quietly. Matt turned his head, eyes searching mine. They just didn't know it was me. Over the past few years, I'd done things I never told them about. Not for praise, not even for closure. Just because I couldn't stop being me. I paid off their second mortgage through a disguised trust fund called Riverstone Legacy. I made sure the documents couldn't trace back to me. I just wanted them to breathe easier. I set up college funds for Charlotte's kids, small but growing, tied to an anonymous donor program. I sent grocery deliveries during lockdown, even arranged for home repair when their roof leaked last winter. I did all of that because I couldn't stop caring, and because I couldn't bring myself to show up and keep getting cropped out of the frame. The next morning, I returned to work as usual. The Voices Unseen building hummed with life. Staff meetings, teen mentors giggling in the hallway, the faint scent of coffee and acrylic paint blending in the air. On my desk sat a single manila folder. Charlotte's resume. I hadn't touched it. Every day I walked past it. It waited there, like a question I hadn't yet answered. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my email. There, in bold, unread font, was a new subject line. Keynote Speaker Invitation, National Youth Equity Summit 2023, Washington, D.C. They wanted me to headline the opening panel. They called me a voice for the unheard. They wanted my story, all of it. And at the bottom of the message was a line I almost missed. Confirmed RSVP Ellen Grant. I exhaled slowly. Somewhere in the middle of the life I'd built from nothing, my past had found a way to knock again. This time, I wasn't sure whether to open the door. I didn't want an apology. At that point in my life, I had let go of wanting things I couldn't hold. Recognition, fairness, even belonging. But I wanted to know if she'd show up, when no one asked her to, when there was no obligation, no spotlight, no holiday meal, just me. The ballroom was quiet in the way big rooms are right before something begins. Hundreds of educators from across the country filled the seats, adjusting lanyards, sipping hotel coffee, and skimming conference programs. Light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off a banner that read, National Youth Equity Summit 2023, Listening Beyond the Surface. I stood backstage, clutching the small index card that held the opening line of my keynote. I'd written and rewritten it half a dozen times, but I didn't need to look. It was already stitched into me. Matt stood by the AV technician in the back. He gave me a gentle thumbs up. A woman in a navy pantsuit walked over with a clipboard. "Ready, Ms. Grant?" I nodded. As I stepped up to the podium, I scanned the crowd, but didn't let my eyes linger. If she was here, I'd find out soon enough. The mic crackled slightly as I adjusted it. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady. "I'm Natalie Grant, founder of Voices Unseen." A soft rustle of programs, a few heads tilted in recognition. I smiled, not for effect, but because I meant it. "We tell kids to find their voice," I continued, "but some of us had to build our own echo, because no one was listening." Silence. Not of disinterest, but of attention. I spoke about what it meant to be overlooked, not in tragedy, but in the slow erosion of being useful but unseen. I told them how quiet girls with good grades often vanish into the background while the loudest pain gets the most comfort. I shared stories from our mentorship program without names, but full of heart. I let my voice shake once, just enough. When I finished, the room rose in applause. Not explosive, but warm. Human. Backstage, a volunteer handed me a water bottle and said, "You just gave half this room permission to feel something they didn't know they needed." I thanked her and walked toward the lobby. And that's when I saw her. My mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Frailer. Her hair had grayed at the edges, and she wore a beige coat that seemed too heavy for spring. In her hands was a small box, wrapped in a paper I recognized from our old kitchen drawer, the one with faded apples and cinnamon sticks. She stepped forward slowly. "Hi, Nat," she said. I nodded. Not cold, not warm, just present. "I don't want to interrupt," she added quickly. I came to listen." I glanced down at the box. She lifted the lid, revealing a folded piece of paper, yellowed, creased, taped together from torn edges. My heart skipped. It was the family tree I drew in second grade, branches carefully labeled with names in crooked handwriting, Mom, Dad, Charlotte, and a blank corner where my name should have been. At the time, the teacher had asked, "Aren't you forgetting someone?" And I'd said, "It's okay." So did they. But now, there it was. My name. Taped back in, written in a newer hand, with a small heart next to it. "I found it last month in the attic," Mom said softly. "I taped it up. I didn't know what else to do." She looked up, eyes glassy. "I don't expect you to fix this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to try being the kind of mother you need." For a moment, I didn't speak. The ballroom noise faded into the distance, just murmurs and footsteps and clinking coffee cups. And then I extended my hand. "You don't have to be perfect," I said, "just honest." We shook hands. Not a hug, not a tearful reunion, but a beginning. A quiet nod that said, "I see you now." I didn't ask her to stay. I didn't ask her to leave. We parted there, under the soft hum of fluorescent lights and faint echoes of applause. Outside, the spring air carried the scent of cherry blossoms and city buses. I walked slowly, the conference badge still around my neck, my heels clicking against the marble. I passed a man selling hot dogs and a group of teens taking selfies by a statue. I let the breeze undo the tension in my shoulders. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't flinch when someone said my name, because I had chosen it, and all that came with it. They left me out of their will, but I wrote my own. Some goodbyes are quiet. No slam doors, no harsh words, just the sound of your own footsteps walking toward something better. That day in Washington, I didn't find closure. I found clarity. Sometimes love isn't loud or obvious. It's a quiet resilience, a choice to keep giving even when you're not seen. And when we stop chasing the people who never looked back, we often discover those waiting to walk beside us. If this story reminded you of someone, or of a moment when you choose yourself, I'd love to hear it. Because healing doesn't happen alone. It echoes.